Hello, we're now going to talk about the data analytics pipeline, which consists of the phases the data goes through when it is analyzed. And it's described as a pipeline because all data entering your system has to go through each of these phases, and it proceeds continuously as more and more data is being introduced to your system. There are 5 phases to learn in this pipeline, and to add insult to injury, 4 of these phases have got alternative names as well, which you should try and learn too. And if this all looks and sounds quite familiar, it kind of is, because in the last video we talked about data lifecycle management, which also has got 5 phases to it. They are ultimately very similar. They aren't completely different concepts. However, essentially DLM is a little bit more broad. It refers to all of the different tasks employees should do as it relates to handling data, whereas this pipeline is just for data analysis. So it's a little bit more specific. And often the end goal for this pipeline is to make it automated. We want to set up some computer programs to handle these phases with little input from employees, whereas DLM is always pretty much handled by employees doing a lot of the different tasks. However, both have got a very similar first phase where we are capturing or creating the data, as it was called in DLM. With the pipeline, this is also called data ingestion. The word ingestion we use in the context of us ingesting food or ingesting water, as in taking it in. In this case, we're taking in the data from the different sources we have. There are lots of different sources and different data gathering methods like APIs, social media, forms, sensors, some of which we'll come back to later in this course. We're getting the data ready to do some analysis on it a bit later. Phase 2 is called process, also called transformation, and this is where we are trying to clean and potentially structure the captured data. To give you a few examples of what cleaning could mean, well, cleaning can mean we're trying to remove some errors in the captured data. We might be trying to remove some duplicates. We don't need repeated values in our captured data, perhaps. We also might be trying to make things a bit more consistent, trying to ensure the data types are all the same and the formats are all the same. And then structuring it tends to mean putting it into a table or a similar format like CSV or JSON. This makes it easier to store. And also, crucially, we do this to make the analysis more useful later. Often analysis produces unreliable results if it's working off of inconsistent data with errors in it. Once we've done some transformation, again, this is typically done by a computer program, we then need to store it somewhere in data storage, also called data stores. This will depend on what you chose to do in DLM, in terms of where this is placed, but often it'll be in a server, perhaps in what is sometimes described as a data warehouse. Now, we may have some iteration at this point. We may move on to analysis, but equally you may decide to repeat phases 1 to 3 until you've got enough data to make analysis worthwhile. In the early stages of a pipeline, you might not really have enough there to be able to do any actual analysis yet. However, when you have got enough data, you can move on to phase 4, which is the analysis phase, where you are doing the examining of the data to try and find these patterns, these trends, or these insights. And it's important to bear in mind that often this is done through a computer program, and you may find that actually the results don't always prove useful immediately. This could be because you need more data sometimes. It's not got enough to look at. The patterns aren't obvious in the data you've got currently. So you might have to iterate and repeat phase 1 again. Also, you might need to do some more processing on the data, which is phase 2, to make it useful. Computer programs need data in a very consistent format. Perhaps your work so far in phase 2 wasn't quite enough, so you might have to iterate that as well. But when you have got some results, we often try and visualize them. This phase is also called just use, where we are taking the results from analysis. That's an example of us having that interaction between the 2 phases. And we're taking these results and presenting them and communicating them to our target audience. So perhaps you've got a data dashboard, which automatically takes the results from analysis and shows the live data to the users. That's a lot more presentable than just the raw data sat in a database. So that's why it's called visualization. But we'll look at visualization and a few of these concepts in more detail in upcoming videos. For now, learn the 5 phases and the alternative names, and that should be enough to go on.